Välkomna igen till Se människan-scenen och Svenska kyrkans monter på Bokmässan 2016. Vi ska nu få vara med på ett samtal som kommer att hållas på engelska. Och våran nästa gäst heter Martin Caparrós och kommer att samtala med Gunilla Hallonsten. Välkomna, welcome.
Tack. Yeah, Martin Caparrós, you are a historian, a writer and journalist, and you have developed this project that led you to travel around India, Bangladesh, Kenya, Sudan, and many other places. And from this, you tell the experience and describe the research activity in this fabulous book, Hunger. It's an essay that seeks to understand one of the worst human problems, world hunger. And people describe it as a global problem. And how would you describe hunger?
Well, hello, and thank you for having me here. And I have to apologize for speaking English, but, well, my Swedish is still worse. You're going to see when I keep on going that my English is not very good either, but I can assure you that my Swedish is much, much worse. How do I define hunger? I think it's the most terrible and violent problem we can solve. I mean, there are quite a lot of problems we cannot imagine how to solve. To solve this problem, which means to put a stop to a situation in which 800 to 900 million people don't eat what they need, and in which, according to Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the UN, 25,000 people die every day because of causes related to hunger, is possible. I mean, it's not a technical problem. What I used to remark here is that maybe 40 years ago, there was the most important historical moment that history didn't record. And it's that moment in which humanity has been able, for the first time in its history, to feed itself completely. I mean, we have the technical means to feed everyone in the world. If we don't do it, it's not because of some technical problems. It's because economic, political, and other problems are putting a stop to it, right?
You know, I would like to also start at the very end of the book, because there you ask the question yourself, how can I stand to know this? And then you start to explain, and you say, standing before or facing such an ugly world, the only possible aesthetic appeal is the call for action in any form, in all forms. Could you explain that to us? What do you mean by this? And why do you bring in the understanding of aesthetics in relation to ethics?
Yeah, well, there is a question that goes repeated all through the book, which is, in Spanish it is, ¿cómo carajo podemos vivir sabiendo que pasan estas cosas? In English it would be, how the hell can we live knowing that all this thing happened, right? And I think it's a valid question. How can we? Usually by not knowing it, or even if we vaguely know, but not paying any attention to this. And it's not very complicated. I mean, it's easy not to pay attention, because the main characteristic of hunger is that it happens to other people. It never happens to us. You know, 1 in 8 people in the world don't eat enough, but it's never us. If we are 80 people here, there's not going to be 10 hungry people among us, right? So it's not complicated not to think about it. But when you start to do it, when you start to think it, when you know, how can you keep on living? just knowing that so many men and women and children are dying every day because we are concentrating all this alimentary wealth of the world for us, right? And what I may or might have called a call for action is that, I don't know, I don't remember that particular quote, but what I hear when I listen to that is that I think that the only way in which this can be changed is by feeling that this is our problem and thinking about what can we do about it. I don't know what. I mean, each one can think about different things, but the only way in which this can be addressed is by making it our problem and doing things. And I suppose, I mean, lastly, it's not in the book, but I'm inclined to think about what happened to ecologic matters. Like 50 years ago, no one thought about them. I mean, I was the university 40 years ago, and there was a very little group of ecologic people that just, well, tried to say things about it and so. Now, it is impossible even to run for, I don't know, for mayor of this city without saying how you're going to save the planet, right? I mean, you have to have a stand on the question. And that is because many people have talked about it, thought about it, wrote about it and stuff. I mean, because many people have spread the concern. Of course, it's not the same thing with hunger, just because of what I said a couple of minutes ago, that it can be easily dismissed as not our problem, whereas ecologic matters are supposed to be egalitarian, are supposed to affect us, all of us, more or less the same, which is not true, of course, because if the level of the sea rises, a few islands in the Pacific or many villages in Bangladesh are going to disappear, while the Dutch are going to have to put some money just to raise their polders accordingly. So it doesn't affect everyone in the same way, but you can imagine that it does.
Yeah.
And that's the core, I think, of the matter. I mean, to be able to think of 800, 900 million people not eating enough as being our problem.
Yeah. You also write that because you have traveled widely, and every time you do, you say that you become more and more heartbroken and desperate in what you see, but that you also believe more and more in despair and hopelessness. And I found that very challenging.
I'm sorry, that I also what?
That you think that the despair and hopelessness can maybe provoke some kind of action. Do you feel desperate in relation to the situation, or do you see any hope?
I don't know. It's hard to answer to that. I mean, I'm a kind of how would I say, procrastinated optimist. I feel that in the midterm things change, and usually they change for the better. I mean, I have studied, as you said, history, and one of the main things I learned from my history studies is that first, things always change. We live in a world that likes to think of itself as permanent. I mean, this kind of society of organization, right?
But on the other hand, what creates change, in your understanding?
The realization that the actual situation is not good enough, that it can be better, that it can be changed for the better. And that's the actual problem, the fact that we are in one of those historic periods in which we have not a clear idea of a better future. I used to say, I don't think it's in the book, but I used to think and to say that historic periods are divided into two kinds of, very roughly, which would be the ones that can imagine their future, and so they tend to rush the arrival of that future. And those who do not, who don't know how that future that could be, so they fear it, right? We have, like maybe 20 or 30 years ago, closed one of these periods of desirable future. I mean, all the modern revolutions were driven by an idea of how this future was going to be, and it was desirable, and it was better, and so and so. It didn't work. So nowadays we don't have yet a new future to offer. It's one of those periods in which we are looking for it, because in every moment, in every period in history, you end by having a new idea of how your future is going to be. But it can take years, decades, even a century, or I don't know. We are in one of those periods in which we fear future. That's ecology mostly, the fact that future appears like a kind of a possible catastrophe. And we don't want to rush it because we don't know where we are going. And we can only imagine it in terms of technical changes, artificial intelligence or mother cells or big computers or whatever, but not in terms of social and economic and political changes, because we don't know. And then we tend to think that all these political and economic and social structures are going to last forever, that capitalism is going to be there forever, that this kind of democracy is going to be there forever. And no system has ever lasted forever.
No.
But I mean, okay.
Yeah, but also, like a red thread through the book, I mean, you have your own thoughts. You have this coming back at least 8 times. What the hell? How can this be? And then you have all the statistics that can be collected. You really put it in place here. On the other hand, you hesitate in using the statistics and ask yourself, why do I use them? Because we can also play with the statistics. And then you have the individual life stories. So how did you think when you compiled all these threads of different kinds and thoughts of different kinds? And why didn't you leave the statistics out from the book? Why did you bring it into the book? Because you ask yourself, why do I do this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, of course, statistics can be easily manipulated.
Yes,
and
that's what you say.
And they are. And the main statistics that we use to measure hunger in the world are the FAO numbers, you know, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and they are very much manipulated. It's long to explain, but really, they really are. Just in order to make us believe that some of the Millennium Goal development goals are closer to being reached, even if they are not reached, but they are closer, stuff like that. I mean, doesn't really matter. But the main point is, yeah, it's good to have a broad idea, a general idea, but if this kind of thing, not being able to eat or not knowing if you're going to be able to eat tomorrow, happened to two people in the world, or 20, or whatever, would it be better? I mean, it's not a problem of quantity in the last resort. It's more like a I don't know, basic ethic problem, right? So that's also why I say, well, I should leave the numbers aside, but I don't, because I'm a coward.
Yeah, you write that as well. But then you balance the statistical information with people who are living with persistent hunger, and you create for the reader, you can for myself, for example, I can see their faces, the context where they are living. I can feel the impossible choices that they have to make. And I felt very much impressed by the way that you ask questions to people. Because I know how hard that is in a context where people are very vulnerable. So how do you think when you enter those meetings with people that are very vulnerable?
Yeah, well, that was like my first decision when I started to think in writing this book. I mean, I had thought about the problem for very long because I worked on social and political issues as a reporter, as a journalist for more than, I don't know, 30 years. And I always saw that hunger was all over, but I couldn't make up, like, how do you say, a whole subject of it. And I was afraid and didn't know how to, and I thought it was a cliche and stuff like that. So when I decided, well, I have to do it, because I just felt that I needed to do it, I didn't know how to, and my first assumption was, there's no such a thing as hunger. There is a lot of people who don't eat enough, which is not the same. We were talking about statistics and stuff like that. Well, those are the abstractions that sometimes help us to avoid the problem, to look somewhere else. And I wanted to show that these numbers were actual real people. So I wanted to go to a certain number of countries just to listen to that people and try to tell a few of their stories. I don't know what you are asking me. I mean, it's hard for me to answer because I think the only ability I really have is to know how to listen. I mean, it's maybe a stupid ability, but I'm proud of it. I'm proud, and I think it's a real privilege. I mean, I feel it like an enormous privilege when I'm, I don't know, in some forsaken village in India, and a woman takes her afternoon just to tell me her life, or a man, or a young person, or whoever. And I really feel very privileged, and I don't know how it comes. I mean, they want to tell me things. I mean, maybe because I can show them that I'm really there to listen, you know? People don't listen usually. I mean, listening is one of the... It's a very underrated but very rare ability or attitude. And I really like it. And I have made, I think, in somehow the right decision to have a job that allows me to develop this stupid ability, you know? And I don't know, it's so nice when someone sits there and just tells you his or her life.
You know, a last question, sort of, is also divided into two pieces, because also like a red thread through the book is your discussion about both religion and ideology. And then there is ongoing discussion about the situation for children.
About?
The situation for children who are starving. And it provoked me because you keep on coming back to that all the time. And then as a reader, I understood after a while, it has to be repeated. The understanding of the children. So I just want to say thank you for that. But the question, ideology and religion, and this is the last question, because time flies.
Yeah, well, I don't know how to say it in front of you, but...
I think you should be honest.
I am anyway, don't worry.
Also in front of me.
I know, I am. No, I think it's, I wrote somewhere in the book that I interviewed hundreds of hungry people, maybe thousands, I don't know, and I didn't find any hungry atheist.
I know, it's pointed out in the book.
It is, yeah. Yeah. I mean, religion is somehow we could discuss how, which is this how, very useful in these hunger situations. The point is, if you say it's useful to keep these people calm in front of these situations, or you can say it helps them to live through this situation. But the fact is that almost every time I discussed with someone who had problems to get their food about religion, oh no, it's not I discussed it, it's them who brought the matter forward. I mean, it's them when I ask them, I don't know, why are you in this situation? I don't know, God knows, he puts me here, I don't know why, but he knows better, and so and so. And how are you going to solve this problem? How are you going to get out of the situation? Well, I don't know, God knows, he's going to take me out of this. We had even some theological discussions. I remember a woman in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, and we discussed because she said, yeah, well, God, the cause of her situation was God. I mean, he had put her on that situation. And then she said that God was going to take her out of that. And I said, well, but if he put you here, why is he going to do the opposite? I mean, why do you, well, and we discussed about this changing wills of her God. I don't know. I mean, I'm also an atheist, although I'm not hungry. I know, well, that's maybe because I'm not hungry, of course.
On the other hand, I'm not hungry either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say that when you are in an impossible situation, it's easier to think that there is some kind of superior power that has put you there. And that when you don't find any solution to that impossible situation, it's easier to think that there is a superior power that it's going to take you out of there. I would say that in some of the cases, it stops you from doing more because you are hoping from something else, from some superior power to do it in your place, right? And that's the harm that it can do to some of the hungry people.
Thank you, Martin, because now time is out.
Okay.
So thank you for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. We cannot stand up.
No.
No.